And I think what this study helped me understand is that this role, if it continues to be adversarial, doctors are going to lose.
Hi, and welcome to It's Not the End of the World, Everyday Use Cases for AI. I'm joined today by Dr. Jeffrey Holzberg, who is a pediatrician based in Douglas, Arizona. Jeff, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby.
So can you give me a bit of give our listeners a bit of context about who you are, your background, your training? I know that you've got a very interesting you've navigated yourself to this present moment in an interesting way.
Yeah, so I'm a community pediatrician with a community clinic known as Chiricahua in Douglas, Arizona, which is a town right on the border between US and Mexico. And I've been a pediatrician here for 8 years. I was their director of clinical research, which led me into work into building actually support groups for families of children with autism. And that work led to recognition by the American Academy of Pediatrics. I ended up getting an early career award with them. But my real interest is around early childhood and around those first 3 to 5 years of life when the brain is growing to its maximum ability. There's more brain growth happening in those first 5 years than ever. And I started a company named Aleli that works to partner with parents to bring neuroscience into the parenting conversation. And in just this last year, I was recognized as the best medical provider in Douglas, just to provide some official status for listeners.
And it sounds like you're constantly trying to innovate in some sort of way. I mean, creating support groups and childhood play groups and thinking about autism, which is obviously a really kind of developing neuroscience area. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I know we're talking about AI here, but for me, the most important thing in the health and well-being of a child is the happiness and the confidence of parents. And so as I've been a pediatrician, I realized that supporting the parents in the best way possible is the best way that I can actually help the child. And so that's been fun to connect with you and others in that way, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm kind of like angling at here is you are doing a very human centric job, right? Um, Helping young humans turn into big humans. You're speaking to families. You obviously have some holistic view of this whole thing. Um, and yet you're also thinking about the forefront of neuroscience, evidently, as you've received awards for that very topic. Um, so there's this, I see a coming together for you of both sort of um, social needs and then also cutting edge research, all in a biological and sociological sphere. So the question then becomes, where does AI come into all of this? Like, when did it first kind of pop up on your radar as something that you should be keeping an eye on? Because I can't help but think, well, AI is such a, it's controversial, it's polarizing, it's inhuman. So, at what point did you start kind of thinking about it, and how did it come on your radar?
Yeah, to best answer that question, it's really important to understand the context in which pediatricians work. So you understand it from the patient perspective. You come in and see the doctor, and the doctor sees you and your kiddo for well child visits, and then if you have a sick visit, then you can go see the pediatrician. From the doctor perspective, I have a schedule over 8 hours of between 22 and 28 kids. So that's one patient every 15 to 20 minutes. And that's one after the other after the other. And that can get busy. And all these visits are either physical, so where you're coming in and we're just sort of talking about life and general health and any concerns you may have. And on the other hand, it's acute visits, office visits, if your child's sick or you have any specific concerns. And AI has a lot of ways in which it can support us, because my job as a pediatrician is not only just to see you, but there's a lot of documentation that occurs. Before I go into the room to see each patient, I have to review their chart completely, their vital signs, and then after the visit, I have to write the note. But the visit is the most important part. And in the visit, we're talking about what's going on with you and the kid. We are doing the exam. We're coming up with diagnoses and we're coming up with plans. So there's a lot that happens in that 15 to 20-minute period. And what's important to note is I was trained as a pediatrician to best understand sick versus not sick. And almost all of the kids I see who come in are not sick. They are well. Like your child is overall very, very healthy. But there's a lot of parent concerns that come up. And a lot of these parent concerns have nothing to do with what I learned in medical school or in residency. A lot of the things that I deal with on a day-to-day basis are around behavior, learning concerns, school concerns, mental health, emotional health, and that is stuff that we were not trained for in residency. But it's the things that parents expect of us because it's affecting their child on a day-to-day basis. And so, in understanding that context in which I am living every day as a pediatrician is important to know how AI can help, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Quite a lot there that you actually covered there. You sort of spoke to this almost un what's the word I'm looking for? Suboptimal structure that healthcare providers are placed under, right? But you also spoke to this environment in which the education that you've received isn't necessarily fit to purpose, or perhaps the education that you receive is designing doctors that could go out into the world and then deal with new challenges. So sort of two parts there, and I kind of want to drill down on both of them. Um, the first thing that springs to mind when you're talking about this kind of like, I've got 15 and 20 minutes to sit with a patient. It reminds me a little bit of when I was a teacher, and there's teachers I've been speaking to about this, right? And teachers have like 100. I taught in a state school in England, which is public school here in America, and had like 150 kids that I would teach in a week, and the kids are doing essays, and then taking the essays in, and you got to mark the essays. And I would do the same maths that you're doing. I'd be like, okay, 150 essays that I meant to mark in a week, and these kids have spent an hour or 2 hours writing them. Like, and even if I spend 5 minutes on each essay, which that's still hours and hours and hours of time on top of the day job, and you realize it's just inadequate. The teacher can't give the student the time that they deserve as a result of all the effort they're putting on. And it feels the same here. You're telling me that you get 15 or 20 minutes with each patient, and it's just, we as a society seem to have accepted that that's okay. And yeah, I don't want my doctor to just spend 15 or 20 minutes looking at me and making a snap decision and then heading off to the next one. And no doubt you've got your actual life to think about as well in between that. Um, I don't know. Does that seem relatable to you in that
Yeah,
category?
I think the analogy is very well said because as a teacher, a part of grading the homework, you feel like you're really making an impact in getting to know the kid, and it's actually helping you in the teaching of the kid. But teachers have all of this administrative burden in addition to just grading that wears them down, that exists outside of the classroom and student setting. And writing the notes sometimes really helps me understand the patient more and really think through what's going on. But so much of the writing of the note is checking boxes, is clicking documentation because of what's required of us as pediatricians in billing and to protect ourselves from a liability perspective. And so a lot of we want to help patients in the best way possible, but the biggest cause of burnout for doctors is all that administrative work. It is all of that charting that has to get done. I have friends that spend hours on the weekends and after work just finishing documentation, and it makes them hate their job.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And it's the same with teachers. You either spend the half an hour that you think this kid's essay deserves, or
Yes.
you just go, you spend 5 minutes real quick doing it, and then you feel like you haven't done the job you came out to do, which is to give this kid as much time as they deserve. So how is AI helping with that?
Well, right now, over the last year, our clinic has adopted an AI scribe. So there used to be scribes that would come in, which used to be sort of med students or people who wanted to be med students who would come in and write the notes for doctors. And they would be in the room with patients writing the note. And now we have AI serving as the scribe. And so the scribe that we have in our clinic is known as Scribe, but the most popular one is Freed. And I read that over 30% of primary care doctors now are using some sort of scribe tool. And so the way it works is you bring in your laptop and the scribe is up and it's listening to the whole conversation. And while you're talking to the patient, it's writing the history, it's completing the physical, so you're talking to the scribe while you're examining the kid, so that the scribe knows what to document, and then the AI tool will actually write the assessment and plan that you can then edit. And so it saves an immense amount of time and actually allows for pediatricians to look at their patients and not look at the computer.
Yeah, that's great. Get away from the screen. But then how do you, Jeff, like you mentioned earlier, it was useful to write up the notes to some degree because you got to know the patient better. So how do you balance um, making sure that you're still getting to know the patient's needs while also using this new tool to free up time?
I guess the idea is that this will allow each pediatrician to have more time to do the deeper digging into what's going on with the patient. Because right now, before AI Scribe, we used to come out and I used to have to do all this documentation and only at the end go through the assessment and plan. And now, if that's all written, I can spend the whole time not worrying about what I'm writing, but worrying about what's going on and doing research and looking at publications or using other AI tools to ask the questions to try to figure out how to best support the patient and worry less about documentation. I know from pediatricians that AI Scribe has helped them have more time in their schedule to do this research that they weren't able to do before.
So just trying to just take the burden of admin off so you can focus on the the human part of understanding these problems and helping the people that you're trying to help.
Yes. Yeah, that it just happened in this last week. I had a 10-year-old girl who I've known for a while who has a chromosomal abnormality. So she has a genetic issue that's been there ever since birth, and it's led to developmental delays. It's led to some eye deformities. And recently, the father came in and let me know that she's having joint pains, and joint pains most notably in her jaw, and he didn't know what was going on. I looked at the jaw. It looked normal, but the patient did have a significant underbite. And so using the AI scribe, I don't have to worry as much about writing the note. And instead, I can say, okay, I need a couple minutes and I can leave the patient room and then do some research into what could possibly be causing this joint pain. Is it something related to the genetic thing? Is it something else that I need to make sure I catch? Or is it just sort of temporary pain that I reassure the patient that will sort of go away with time? And so it has freed up time to be able to do that deeper digging.
So heartening to hear. That's the kind of how it's helping with the burden of admin. But then you've also described this landscape that is very diverse and strange, and there's all these new problems coming in, and medical school didn't necessarily equip you with that.
Yeah, so my dad is also, I should say, a doctor, and he was trained in the 1980s. When he was training to be a doctor, health information was coming out, new health information all the time. But in the 1980s, the amount of new health information doubled around every 50 years. When I was in medical school, I graduated in 2014. In 2014, new medical information was doubling every 73 days around. So it went from every 50 years to every 73 days. And so when I entered general pediatrics, not only is the amount of health information that I'm required to know just coming at me like a fire hose, but there's also all this new information as that I'm expected to know as a general pediatrician. And AI has helped me a ton to be able to, one, process the information and come up with strong diagnoses using medical literature, and two, learning about all the necessary information in general pediatrics that I didn't learn in residency.
I guess that really puts into perspective. People always say, "Oh, advances in healthcare," and wow, I mean, it's doubling every 73 days, and I presume that arc is still getting steeper.
Absolutely. And everyone says, ask your pediatrician, or you see these commercials on new medicines or new technologies. It's like, ask your doctor about it. I mean, your doctor doesn't know about all these technologies happening. Every 2 to 3 months there's the amount of information is doubling. It's just incredible. And so and doctors are not all knowledgeable beings, but AI very much is. And so with that partnership, uh, I mean, it will be much, much stronger. It's necessary. It's a necessary partnership.
So what's your workflow with it then? So how do you know, I come in, I say to you, "Hey, this thing's happening. I saw this thing on TV. You've never heard of it." Like, give me some sort of like practical insight into your workflows.
Yeah, for the most part, I don't need AI because most of the stuff I see is bread and butter. So if you came in and you didn't have any questions about your kiddo, AI would not be very useful, other than maybe being used as a scribe. But for that 10-year-old who had the jaw pain, and I wasn't really sure what was going on, I used AI I left the patient room and then copied the note and then put the whole note into AI, into ChatGPT and another program I used called Open Evidence. And I just asked, what is the most likely differential diagnosis and what would be the most effective plan and labs to order from here? And and I use ChatGPT and Open Evidence as a partner and really oftentimes as a guide for what the best next steps should be. And so actually plugging in the patient history is the best way to be able to get the best answers out of ChatGPT.
Right. That's in moments of uncertainty, or is that always part of your workflow?
In moments of uncertainty and confusion, for sure.
Yeah. And it's better than what was when you were uncertain before, what would you have done?
I would have looked into the literature. Um, so I have this little booklet that I made when I was in residency that I would have flipped through the pages. Old doctors used to use textbooks that they would flip through. And now we had this tool known as Up to Date, which would help to synthesize the literature. And you'd have to sort of search for the information rather than the information coming to you, which is really what AI is
Okay.
the
So
information.
so I can see how, that method that you're describing with information changing so rapidly is not up to standard. You go for a textbook that was written over 73 days ago. That's a problem. Um,
That's right. That's exactly right. Yes.
but how can you be sure, we all know that AIs hallucinate. How can you be sure that what it's telling you is accurate?
Well, I trust AI. Well, so a study came out in the Journal of American Medical Institute, JAMA, that really made me much more confident in ChatGPT than I would have believed. And so this study gave 6 case examples to doctors, and they said, doctors, in some cases, you can use ChatGPT if you want. And then it gave those same cases to ChatGPT alone. So you have 3 groups. You have the doctors who received the cases on their own. You have the doctors who received the cases and could ask ChatGPT for help, and then you have ChatGPT alone without the doctors. And the question is, who had the best diagnosis? Who was able to get the answer correct on what these patients had, and who was best able to interpret next steps? And what I thought is that doctors using ChatGPT would have the best results, but they found that ChatGPT, that AI alone, did significantly better than any use of the doctor. The ChatGPT alone got 90% of the cases correct that were asked. The doctors with ChatGPT got 76%, and then the doctors alone got 74%.
Wait, the
And
doctors with
so
ChatGPT got 76% and alone got 74%, but
that's right.
ChatGPT on its own got 90%.
That's right.
I don't know if that's depressing or like it was definitely interesting. There's definitely someone at OpenAI somewhere cackling into their big computer in the cloud. Um, but what do you make of that? So
I mean, we're all just processing um, information. If you ask doctors all the time, and you ask the doctors in these studies, which they did, they say they rely on their intuition. What does their doctor feel? Which is really like what has all of your training led you to just sort of feel is true. Um, and so doctors use that a lot, which is very, very effective. I mean, in many cases, it's 74 to 76% effective. It's just when you use AI and you have all of the information ever, then it can be much more effective at being able to diagnose problems. But diagnosing problems isn't the only role that doctors do. And so this doesn't mean that doctors are no longer useful at all or don't have a role in the future. It just means that our role with patients is going to change as we learn how to best partner with AI. And so for me, it provides a lot of confidence that we have an incredible tool to really support patients, especially when there are these confusing cases that are really bothering patients. And families are really struggling because they don't know what's going on. And now we have a tool that is more effective than anything we've ever had before. And it means that we can uh, support families in a way that we've never been able to before.
yeah, I think that's a really sensitive and astute way of thinking about it. I seem to remember you told me about that study before, offline, off mic, and I got the impression that that study was a bit of a watershed moment for you, or an aha moment. Is that right?
And I think it was a watershed moment for a lot of providers. It kind of got a lot of backlash because it was done at NYU um, by a physician who was seeing ChatGPT come up a lot and believed that it was going to be inferior. And but he recognized that our duty as doctors, is to the patients. It's to provide the best care we can and to support them as they work through really challenging health issues. And so, as- uh, uh, and so beautifully said for him, he recognized that this isn't about protecting doctors. This is about really supporting patients. And if we fail to see that AI can oftentimes do that better than doctors can in confusing cases, then we are not supporting patients in the best way we can.
I guess my question is then, what was going on with you before you read that research? What were your preconceptions?
Yeah, I think I thought that AI was so before I saw that study, I kind of thought that AI was cheating. I really saw that AI was doing the work that I was trained to do, and that it was a very adversarial relationship between doctors and AI. And I think doctors cling to the fact that AI makes mistakes all the time as a way of justifying our role and place. And I think what this study helped me understand is that this role, if it continues to be adversarial, doctors are going to lose because this is more effective, and that the relationship doesn't have to be adversarial. And in many cases, patients don't just want AI to solve all their problems. There's something really magical that happens when patients come into the room with doctors, and that relationship of trust, of listening, and of heart-centered connection cannot be replaced by AI. And in fact, AI can do the work that allows us to continue to maintain these relationships, hopefully in a better way than we were able to before. So I see a bright future for doctors who can effectively learn how to use AI.
I think that's a really yeah, heartening take. And I feel the same. My hope always is that this is going to help us with human connection and help us focus on putting our attention where it matters, which is in our relationships, and less of the burden of all these other sort of rote automatic tasks that can be automated. And I think it's great, and I want to underscore, you are very much someone who's all about human connection, is about, what it is to be human and what it is to have these relationships with people. And that, as far as everything that I've seen of you, seems to be what motivates your practice. So I do, we're not speaking to a tech head here or a tech bro that just wants to take shortcuts. We're speaking to someone here that really passionately cares about doing the best job for the human at the heart of the, whether it's the profession or the service. And so I really think that your take is powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think a lot of patients are seeking that kind of relationship with their doctors. I mean, let's say that your kiddo got really sick and you weren't sure why. And let's say that he was crying for 5 days straight. Maybe he had some fevers. He wasn't eating well. He had a rash that was developing. And let's say that he started to develop a tic and you didn't know what was going on. And you're worried about this. And you go in to see your doctor. And I would imagine that the role that you want from the doctor could be there and say, "This is what I think this is." But I think a lot of patients would say, "Hey, can you use this information and use all the resources you have to give us the most informed answer you can?" And what I would expect is for the doctor to use their expertise to communicate with AI so that you as the patient know that nothing is getting missed, that the breadth of everything that this could be is being covered. And then you would want the doctor to sit there with you and help you understand what this all means so that you're developing the connection with the doctor while you know that everything else is being covered.
Completely relate to that. Absolutely, entirely, 100 million percent. And because that study that you mentioned is like, yes, it's super interesting, but I don't feel, even though it's 90%, it got 90% versus the doctor with AI that got 76%. I mean, that's quite a big difference.
Yeah.
And it gives me some confidence to, to ask health questions to an AI. And yet I just cannot rely I'm an AI forward person, but there's at no point do I think, oh, these answers are sacrosanct. It's just, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to go and speak to the doctor about this particular thing. Um, that's just instinctively my gut. Whatever it is, there's something human about me that wants to just connect with another human that knows what they're talking about. And who knows, maybe that's just like a hangover from a bygone era, and that will evolve and change. But I do really believe that it's about these human to human relationships, and I just need to speak to an expert and say, hey, my AI said this. What do you think? Do you agree with that? Um, and it reminds me of a teacher I had on the podcast previously. He said, he realized after he started to kind of let go of these preconceptions and to start embracing it, that, oh, this thing is an amazing education partner. It can teach me my subject better, and it can help me teach the kids, and they can ask it questions too, but it doesn't replace the need for just a kind of a human guide that can guide the children towards the right answers. I'm also reminded of just, the placebo effect, and
That's right. I
how
was thinking the same thing.
the nourishing impact, it speaks to how powerful psychology is, the placebo effect. And obviously we don't know why it's so powerful, that when a doctor says, hey, this is okay, do it, take this pill and it will make you feel better, and that what do you call it, sugar pill, that fake medication is oftentimes more powerful than real medication, just because there's some psychological component with the trust that you have with this person telling you that it's okay. And I can see, combine those two things together, really powerful AI and a human, and the human vouching for the AI and saying, yeah, you can move forward, that's bound to have a really positive impact without undermining the provider at the heart of it. And just to continue, and I'm sure I know I'm saying a lot here, but to wrap up my thoughts that are all kind of spilling out, the final thing is that I recently went to my provider at the end of for the yearly checkup. And I don't think they have that in England, but here in America, you get a yearly, and when you go get your yearly, you get bloods, you get various different samples, and they give you the all clear. It's like a general health check. And so I go in, see my provider, and obviously I didn't know that he has 15 minutes per person. It's a very quick in and out job, you know. And then at the end of it, you get on your patient portal, you get a whole bunch of the results from all of your bloods. They're just like graphs and charts. And then he sent me a very quick message, just saying, yeah, all clear, with a thumbs up emoji, pretty much, you know. And I'm like, okay, but what about all this blood work and all this stuff that I can see all the charts, but none of it makes any sense to me. So I took screenshots and put them into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT gave me a really clear breakdown of like all of my results, my age demographic, things I should be thinking about, what I should be watching out for. And it struck me in that moment two things. One, I don't know if ChatGPT is right. Like it was really like heartening to see, and it made me feel like taken care of in a certain type of way, or gave me perspective on my own health in a way that I've never had before. But I just thought, can't my doctor do that? Can't he just sort of just stick this stuff quickly into ChatGPT, send me the report from ChatGPT, say, hey, I've skim read it. All of this looks accurate, you know, thumbs up emoji. Um, and again, I don't want to cast aspersions because we're at a nascent time with this technology, but it does strike me that that is obviously the next step and is sort of what you're describing, I think. So a lot there for you to respond to. I'm obviously just, venting my own thoughts I've been thinking about on this subject for a while now. But yeah, I don't know. How do you respond to anything that I said there?
I mean, it's so true. It's amazing how if the doctor had simply done what you did, which is just print out or make a copy or a screenshot of all the labs and your history, put it into ChatGPT and said, come up with a one-page handout that describes the labs and the next steps for the patient, and then sent that to you, just like you had looked up the way that you would feel about the information, even if it was the exact same, is dramatically different depending on where it came from. And that talks about the importance of the doctor patient relationship, of this trusted source. That it's not just information that makes us feel safe and assured, but it is knowing that there is knowledge and expertise, but also that human connection there. That there's someone who's thinking about you, looking out for you, and that you feel seen by someone else. And that simple step is got to be the next step where it comes from the doctor instead of you. And that was just a missed opportunity. And it's a missed opportunity that as a pediatrician I still make all the time. And I assume that many of my patients are going on ChatGPT and interpreting labs and diagnoses that because I did not take the time to give them that in the visit.
Yeah, well, you sound a little bit kind of being a bit hard on yourself there, and so I want to just speak to.
That's
I mean,
true.
you,
Yeah.
well, it's not your fault. I think it's the profession. It strikes me that it's the industry itself is still evolving, calibrating to make these practices a default part of the. That was NYU that I saw my doctor with, and they have their own software and portals. It just strikes me this just needs to be a built-in part of it. That here's your AI report, send that to the patient. You know, just check it over. It speaks to what you were saying earlier, right? Like, you can either you've got all this admin to do. I'm not expecting my doctor to write up a full report on all of my bloods when ultimately that report is just a thumbs up at the end of it. He shouldn't have to do that. He can't do that. But the infrastructure needs to be in place, and the training, and I imagine in the years to come, that will be the way that it is. He is like, "Hey, the AI has done this for me, and I've checked it, and don't worry, go about your day, and see you in 12 months' time."
Yeah, and when you look at your labs, I mean, almost every lab report has so many different things that are measured in the blood, and almost always one of these is a little off. And patients will ask me, what is this one measure that's a little off? And it's really, from all our expertise, is semi meaningless. But the patient doesn't know that. All they see is that this number is in red, and that means danger. And so when you get the all clear, and then there's this number in red, you don't know, is this okay? Or did the doctor miss this? Or what's happening here? And and so another reason that communication is so important. A second thing to say on that and what you did with ChatGPT by plugging in all your numbers is that personalized medicine is really what AI allows us to do in a way that we've never done before. When you look at your labs and you see whether something is normal or not normal, that's all based on a bell curve. It's based on the majority of people having numbers within this range. But as is natural with a bell curve, there's some people who are naturally higher and some people who are naturally lower. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong. It just means that this is where they are. But it will show up in the labs as abnormal. And so as we start to get more and more information about us, we can plug all of this information, including family history, birth history, um, and medical viruses that we've had. It can all be gathered into AI, and AI can really help us to know what is normal for us and what is abnormal for us, as opposed to just comparing us to the general population. And it allows for really unique, specific targets and goals and therapies for your specific case.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, Jeff. Well, it sounds like you have from the skeptic through to the watershed moment to now quite the optimist about where this could go. Before we're going to move on to the next bit of the podcast now, Jeff, which is the practical use cases, which is our quick tip section. The subtitle for this podcast is "It's not the end of the world: Everyday use cases for AI," and we want anyone and everyone to be able to tune in and take away something that they can use in their day-to-day lives. But before we get to that, because we are kind of in an optimistic space and we're going to end on an optimistic note, I just want you to let me know if there are any kind of watch outs. When you're whether it's as a medical professional or things that you might say to your colleagues or to the broader public in general. What are the sort of, is there anything that makes you nervous?
Certainly. I'm nervous that people believe that information is all that is needed and taken from a doctor visit. I think that as AI becomes more universal, that people will just plug in all of their information into AI and start to direct their own health without actually having the knowledge base from which to do it. And in some cases, that can be very empowering because people can take control of their own health. But in other cases, and for people who tend to lean into anxiety, it can take people down dark rabbit holes with no sense as to what's up and what's down. And having a partner in that who can relate to anxiety and who knows where you're at and listen to your heart and feel your belly, those things, those things are really, really important. And so for a lot of cases, a lot of patients, we should never say that AI will do the whole job of it.
Such good advice. And it makes me think a little bit about this NYU study that you pointed out, right? There was a doctor there that knew everything about it and was able to give the AI a precise question, and I suppose, prod it and get the answers right.
That's
But
right. Yeah.
someone who's not trained could take it in all sorts of different directions. And I use anyone who's used a large language model in all sorts of circumstances, the longer you use it for, the more it can start just gradually drifting off away from the what starts out as a very salient answer. And I think, I can completely see what you're describing here. I could completely see someone spiraling and leading the AI together concurrently. You just both do a dance that takes you off down some very dark places, as you put it.
Yeah, right. The prompt is everything. And what you put into the prompt, it really determines where the answer will take you. And what the ChatGPT got in the NYU study was a very clear, concise prompt. But if that prompt is changed based on the anxieties of the patient and certain things are highlighted more than others, the answer will become very different.
Totally. And I mean, my experience with AI as well is like, I'll give it, maybe it will give me an answer. And if I don't like the answer, I can say to it, hey, I'm not sure you're right about that. I think about this. And it will
Yeah.
go, for the most part, eventually it will say, oh, yeah, you're right, Bobby. You know what? Maybe you are right about that thing. And then next thing you know, we're off. We're off to any old fantasy that I'm cooking up.
That's right. I totally see that. Yeah.
That was a really great answer, Jeff. Let's come back from darker places and let's give our audience some useful tips. First, a general tip or general use case that you think is useful for anyone and everyone.
So I think everyone just needs to start using AI. I mean, and use it for health and just start to get comfortable with it. It's here to stay. I have a lot of my colleagues and other doctors who are just not using AI at all because they feel either that it's cheating or they just don't know about it. But the only way to get to know something is to use it. And this is here to stay. And my big general advice is just try. Just start having a conversation with AI, and they have incredible features now like the talk to, where you just push the button and you're having a conversation with AI, and get used to having those conversations because the more you can start now, the better prepared you'll be for where it's going.
Yeah, that's a common thing people say when they come on the podcast. But hey, it's helpful, and I will also say to it, say to that, it's like it's such a nuanced experience. You can think that you know everything about what this technology can do, but that's because you have got experience with encyclopedias and web pages and other types of technology and calculators. This is not that, and it's so weird. It's not doesn't respond and behave like you might expect it to, and it's a completely new experience. And the only way you can really understand it is to play with it, because I could tell you that, hey, you can ask it 10 times to give you 10 ideas about this thing, or it really helped me feel less anxious about this thing. But you are you, and your intelligence is your own intelligence. And I don't know what happens when your intelligence merges with this artificial intelligence, but it is an intelligence. And it's new and it's different and it's unexpected. And as you say, Jeff, it's going to keep evolving. So get to know how the physics of this thing, you know, like I what's the difference between bouncing a tennis ball off a wall and a ball made out of rubber and a soccer ball? I can try and describe it to you, but until you've done it, that's the only time you're going to know.
That's
Um,
exactly.
so so yeah, start playing with it is really, yeah, it's number one. It's number one. All right, Jeff. I'm going to let you have that one, even though that's the one that always comes up. You're the only healthcare professional who said it. So let's move on to more specific then. So your own personal, in my notes, I have it written down as your own personal superpower, but I think of that more as just like a specific hack or use case that you've found, and it could be professional, or it could be in your day to day life.
I use it all the time to support me in understanding my own health and starting to personalize my health. So I have certain podcasters that I listen to, certain health experts, certain guides that really I trust in terms of medicine, and I prompt ChatGPT to say, I want you to study these people deeply and be able to answer from their perspective, and I want you to take the role of an expert, PhD trained health provider who is an expert in nutrition and exercise, in physiology, and give that prompt to ChatGPT at the very beginning. Press enter and then tell ChatGPT the story of your health life, which I did. So I said, ChatGPT, At 40 years old, I was born full term. I didn't have any health problems growing up. I had a lot of allergies. I'm not going to go through my whole health history here. But I told it everything. This is how often I exercise. This is my whole daily nutrition, including everything that I put into my breakfast, ingredient by ingredient. These are the supplements that I take. These are my most recent labs and blood pressure, and I put that all in, and then asked ChatGPT if I want to maximize my brain health, what would be three different things, activities, and three different supplements that you would encourage me to use and why? And so I put everything in there, and then this incredible personalized report comes out that really has guided me into knowing some activities that I need to include in my life, and then some supplements that I now take. So it's been really, really great in that sense.
That is the first time I've ever heard anything like that, and that's really super interesting. Would you be able to, um, give us that prompt, and then I can share that on my channels?
Absolutely. Happy to do that.
Cool. So this one chat just starts synthesizing all of the information of these various experts and tries to give you advice within the confines of what those people advise.
Yeah, really narrowing ChatGPT at the beginning with a clear role that you want it to do and people that you want it to study and refer to is really important if you are trying to get certain information out. Otherwise, it gets information from a lot of different people and you don't know, it's much less trustworthy. But when you really give that initial prompt and keep feeding it the information you trust, you'll get more trustworthy information.
All right, that's good to know. Okay, so give me a bit of a sense of, are there any like watch outs with, is this a foolproof thing, or how do you, what are some of the watch outs you've gleaned from doing this from your perspective as a medical expert?
Yeah, well, you can get down the deep dark road of supplements, and I mean there's so many supplements that anyone can take, and there's a lot of noise right now around trying to optimize health and longevity. And once we start getting into the world of optimizing our health, we actually take ourselves out, I think, from just enjoying the present moment and releasing control. And so I think the dark feature of all this is this trying to control the outcomes in our health as opposed to just letting things be as they are and accepting who we are, which that acceptance and surrender and calmness is perhaps more important to our health than all these supplements that maybe ChatGPT would end up giving us.
Interesting. Okay, so it likes to end up recommending supplements in your experience.
Well, that's what I asked for.
Okay, right. Well, you're getting what you asked for, Jeff. Um, I want to give our listeners just one more practical watch out in this regard. From my experience, um, AIs, chat LLMs, they have some sort of memory within the chat itself. I mean, they have memory across chats as well, depending on which one you're using. But they have a certain limit to how long a chat can be before they start hallucinating and going a bit weird. So I would recommend keeping an eye out for that. Usually you can kind of tell, right? You start giving it a question and it starts asking a question, answering a question from 10 messages ago, or it starts referencing something that you didn't ask it or whatever. It just starts going weird. But if that does happen, it's just, I would recommend that the user um, asks the AI to summarize the chat, summarize what we've talked about so that I can go to a new chat, paste that in, and then pick up again where I've left off. Sometimes you just need to reset the chat to kind of like kick it back into gear, at least where we are right now in at the end of 2025. But I've experienced that with ChatGPT. Gemini is currently the market leader, perhaps, in reasoning, and I've experienced it with Gemini, which is also known for having huge context windows and the ability to synthesize a lot of information. So it can happen with all of them. So yeah, I just want to. That's a kind of a PSA from me there. Any other kind of weird technical issues you might want to flag when using it in this way?
No, nothing else I know about. Nothing else.
Yeah. So in which case, was just all the same, really. Just like, yeah, it's great as a healthcare like assistant, but still not a substitute for speaking to your doctor about anything, and bearing in mind the majority of people listening to this probably aren't healthcare professionals, and there is very much the risk of leading an AI down a dark and weird path. So, as always, just always approaching this technology with some degree of skepticism and a curious but skeptical mind, and not taking everything for granted, taking it with a pinch of salt. But with that being said, still a very powerful and useful tool. So, very much looking forward to getting that prompt from you, Jeff. I think that's just, yeah, I think that's amazing advice. All right. So, moving on to our final tip, which is a fun or unexpected use case.
Yeah, I love asking ChatGPT or AI, what is it that I'm not seeing and that I'm clearly missing? As it builds all this information about me, and as I've used ChatGPT and uploaded documents for my own business, and it sees the product I'm creating and everything I'm doing, it gets to know not only the product, it gets to know me and the way that I'm thinking and the way that I write and the way that I tend to force certain things in others. And there have been beautiful prompts that I have had and seen that have asked ChatGPT to, using all the information that you know about me, what are the what are some of the patterns that you see that I clearly don't see about myself that would help me to be a better leader and that would help me to be happier in life? And then what are 3 or 4 books you would recommend me reading to really support growth in these areas? And that has been fun.
Mega prompt, Jeff. You're
Yeah,
just a
that's a good
super
one.
prompter. That's a great prompt. I've played with similar things myself, but the way you articulate that, I love the idea of also getting books to help you learn more in that department.
And I'll probably just get ChatGPT to summarize the books and I'll just read and then read the books.
He's joking,
I
listeners.
think there is I love how it gets to know me. Because it's when I've done that, it's like spot on, uncomfortably so. It's like, oh yeah, damn.
Yeah, it's weird that, isn't it? It's interesting. And I'm looking forward to having a therapist on the podcast to talk about, I think, some of these similar things, because I know I have a lot of therapists in my family, and I know they have some anxiety about much the same things that you talk about. Is this going to replace therapists? And, the punchline here, I think, is that no, you still want someone to talk to. So great. Yeah, great advice, Jeff. Thanks so much. Before we wrap up, I do know you're active on TikTok and any other social channels. So if there's anything you'd like to plug, let me know.
Yeah, I'm not as active on social media as I'd like. But if you're interested in following me or learning more, I encourage you to reach out to me directly. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram at drjeff.aleli, Aleli. Or you can just go to www.aleli.com.
That's great. And remind us what Aleli is exactly.
Aleli is my early childhood program where I partner with parents in bringing neuroscience into the family, into the conversation.
All right, fantastic. All right, I have all of those links in the description as well, and I hope also we'll get that super prompt from you to kind of help our listeners become better stewards of their own health.
Yeah, absolutely, Bobby. I'll do that for sure.
All right, thanks, Jeff. All right, and to our listeners, thank you for joining us on It's Not the End of the World: Everyday Use Cases for AI. We'll see you next time, unless it really is the end of the world.